I'd like to welcome everyone to the Cincinnati Public Schools Audit Committee meeting. It's October 26th, 2022. I'd like to start by standing up and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for attending. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dan Holthouse for an audit committee update.
Great, thank you, Tim. Annually, we go through the process of member and chair reappointment. So in the packet, you will have a timeline of that process. And in our October meeting, we notify those members who are coming up on term reappointments in order for them to determine if they would like to continue on the audit committee. Those three members that are up for term reappointments are Jim Crossett, myself, and Liz Guttridge. So right now, I will ask for the three of us to state intentions of whether they would like to continue on in the next term, which would be another 3-year term from January of 2023 through December of 2025. And once that is determined, then in the December 20th meeting, there will be a vote of the audit committee meeting of the audit committee to formally recommend or not recommend them to be reappointed to another 3-year term. That will be submitted to the finance committee for approval. That will be done just in time for January 2023 for our next calendar year. So, Jim, do you intend to seek reappointment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Liz, do you intend to seek reappointment?
Yes.
Okay. And I also intend to seek reappointment. So we'll have a formal vote in our December meeting to finalize that process. Additionally, the chair and vice chair positions are voted to 1-year terms. So it's only a 1-year term. It's not a 3-year term like we have with our committee appointments. So that process will be concluded in our December meeting as well. So I ask that any audit committee members who wish to run for the chair or the vice chair position to let Lauren know via email or phone call after this meeting and before the agenda is submitted for the December meeting. She will put all that information together, submit it to the audit committee ahead of time so that everybody can take a look at who is intending to run for those positions. And in the December meeting, we'll have a formal vote and then recommendation up to the finance committee to be approved by them for the chair and vice chair for only the 2023 calendar year.
Dan, I am going to retire as the chairman of the audit committee. But my last meeting is going to be December 20th. I'd like to remain on the audit committee. I guess my term is not up, so that's fine. So if you're interested in being the chair or vice chair, what's the process? They notify Lauren, or what do they?
Notify Lauren. She'll accumulate the names of those interested in those positions, communicate that to the audit committee ahead of the December meeting. Discussion, if we need to state our positions or whatever we need to do, depending on who's running for what. Then depending on how that all shakes out, the audit committee will discuss, deliberate, and vote for the chair and vice chair. Any other questions or comments about the process? Did I cover it all, Lauren? Okay, so moving on, we've talked about audit committee goals for much of, I guess, the latter half of this year in our meetings. We left our last meeting with the intent of having a working session for audit committee members to talk about the goals that were recommended. And the goals in our packet today are substantially the same as those that were submitted in our last meeting. Members of the committee met, had the working session, and we discussed some clarifications on what we're trying to accomplish with these goals. Fundamentally, our objective here is to provide insight to the board and to the management of the district in areas as an advisory board that is a volunteer board. The one thing that did change in this that came out of our working session was having audit committee members attend and or watch the monthly budget, finance, and growth committee meetings. And really the intent of that was to allow audit committee members to stay informed with what is going on in the district. And by doing so, we'll allow the information that is presented to us today and in our future meetings to be honed in more on us being able to discuss topics and provide value versus being presented to when we might be able to consume that information in other forums. So going forward, we are going to ask that audit committee members consider. We're not going to make it mandatory that you sit through the couple-hour monthly presentations by the budget, finance, and growth committees, but we are going to ask that the committee members begin to trying to consume information in forums outside of our meetings so that we can make our time together as productive as possible. And I'm going to first start, and I will be looking at the budget, finance, and growth committee meetings for November and December. And what I'd like to do is kind of take it upon myself to be the first to do it is watch those meetings and formalize minutes that I think are pertinent to the group, and then send those out to the group so that the minutes are taken by the meeting, but I want to hone in on information that's important for us so that we're consuming that information the most effective way possible. So that was the big change to the goals and the ask that we have of the committee. We are going to consider, depending on how much time that takes, we might ask that every month a different audit committee member take that task on so that we spread the time commitment out a little bit to everybody else. So I'll report back with how much time it takes me to do that, and to see what kind of burden we have and what we're asking. But really the intent here is so that we all come here as prepared as possible to discuss the business of the district and provide the most value that we can. And we do have a very limited time together. An hour and a half every 2 months is not a tremendous amount of time. So by viewing or reading the minutes or viewing the recordings, I think we can get more value out of the time that we have here. So anyone have any further questions or comments regarding our audit committee goals for the fiscal year 2023? Okay.
Thanks, Dan. I guess
yield back to Tim. Thank you.
Okay. Lauren, I guess you're on next with an audit status report. I just want to point out that in the packet of materials that was on the website, we got a certificate for highest achievement in open and transparent government. I guess under the STARS program, which I guess is a credit to Lauren as well as the Treasurer's Office. So I don't know if you were going to mention that or not, but I'd like to publicly acknowledge the good job you're doing. Okay, go ahead. You have the floor, Lauren.
Thank you, Chairman Halpin. Yes, that was a huge credential to the district. I will give credit where credit is due to the Treasurer's Office as well as our General Counsel who handles our public records requests. So you'll see just behind the status report the achievement itself as it is shown on the screen, as well as the Auditor of State Keith Faber's description of what the program really means and entails. So again, just a great job there with our transparency for our community. Wonderful. So rolling right along, I'm going to keep things moving at a brisk pace as I know Ms. Bolton has a good deal to cover in our next topic. So please feel free to further expand on anything or ask questions once I get through the update. So in terms of internal audit, starting on the first page under advisory projects, cash controls and minimization is a key project in our advisory section this year. What that entails, as you may recall from previous discussions, is us partnering with the accounts receivable department within the Treasury.
Hey, Lauren, we don't have good acoustics here. You're going to have to slow down.
Yeah, thank you.
I understand what you're saying.
directly. There we go. I'll look this way a bit more. Thank you. Yes, the large crowd we have here tonight. Thank you. Thank you. So the cash controls and minimization project is something that the internal audit department is partnering with the treasurer's office on this year. And the focus of this work is helping the AR department perform school site visits with the intention of validating and measuring our controls that are in place around cash handling in the schools, with the ultimate goal of minimizing those cash touch points as cash is so inherently risky. Further, we've since expanded upon the initial intention since we last spoke to now include donations via crowdfunding. So this is another huge area of the district that has a great growth potential for further definition. Potentially, I'm getting ahead of myself, board policy. So that's something that you may see before you in audit committee and other committees in the near future. Moving right along to transportation expenditures, based on the feedback we received from the audit committee this past year during our risk assessment process, transportation is a huge focus of not only this committee, but the board and the district as a whole. So internal audit is continuing to support this initiative by partnering very closely with our new Chief Operating Officer, Chris Burkhart, and his predominant focus is improving the financial projections as it relates to transportation expenditures. Of course, he's also focused on the operational side of things, but that financial side is where internal audit comes into play. So we are continuing to be engaged and serve as consultants to share the takeaways around the audit we performed back in fiscal 2019, so we can share the lessons, takeaways, and controls that should be in place as they further define and improve the financial processes in transportation. The next area I will highlight was our security badge access project. This project has now been completed, but I did want to share a little bit of procedural in terms of next steps. So the audit has been complete and shared with our management team, including extensive meetings with our superintendents, chief leadership, and their direct reports who oversee the security badging process. The next step in this is a bit different than typical in that we will next report to the board via executive session, given the sensitivity of the material that was audited. So that is due for reporting on December 5th, and we will be forthcoming as to how that will be communicated further to this committee. And finally, in the follow-up section, I would like to touch on the progress of the benefits follow-up audit. We are well underway with the audit and beginning our testing. Not only have we had our audit kickoff meeting, but we have had extensive conversations bringing our new management teams up to speed. So for context, we have a almost entirely new turnover in new management as it relates to those who supervise benefits. So while our benefits manager is still the same, our director of talent and staffing and acquisition is new, as well as our chief human resources officer. So we have spent a good deal of time bringing them up to speed on the journey of not only the internal audit, but the audit committee's priorities, their interests, and expectations as we move forward. In the final page of the document is a summary of the outstanding external audits that are underway. The one critical area that you are well attuned to is our Ohio Auditor of State Financial Audit. Our Plattenberg partner came and spoke with us at the last meeting to provide that kickoff, and we will be sure to keep you all informed as to next steps as that report is issued. So I'll pause there for any questions or additional areas you'd like me to expand.
Any questions or comments for Lauren? Okay.
Yes, sorry. So on the cash donations, does that include auditing like ABC? I know a lot of our cash donations are in form in the schools are in the form of athletic donations. So I was wondering if that includes that organization.
That's a wonderful question. So that is something that the accounts receivable team and treasurer's office, who's leading the work, is going to include in the review, making sure there's a clear understanding as to what falls under the ABC purview and what truly is a CPS crowdfunding or donation, as I think it is an important point for us to decipher between the two. Great suggestion.
Any other questions for Lauren? Okay, we're way ahead of schedule. Okay, well, the meat of the meeting is going to be Eve talking about goals and guardrails. And before she starts, I just want to give a little background to how I envision how Cincinnati Public Schools have been doing. I think we have to improve things. Renetta, is that how her name is? Renetta Wright is our third superintendent since Mary Ronan retired. She's actually working somewhere else. Norwood. She's the superintendent of Norwood? Yeah. We're spending just under $15,400 to educate each student in our district. We have gotten the support of the public. I think we've passed every levy for the last 10 years, maybe. Everything's passed. We have a levy on the ballot in November. It's a renewal, no additional taxes. So the board has identified that there's areas that we need improvement, that we need to improve. And Eve has asked the audit committee to provide our input into what we can improve in our operations, just how we can do better. And the other piece of it is that this report card came out in September saying the district didn't meet state expectations in any of the 5 major categories tracked, but did make improvements in some areas. In other words, our core function, educating our students, in the eyes of the public, we're falling short. There's many legitimate excuses why we're having problems, but they're just that excuse. They're excuses. So with that, Eve, a very nice introduction. I apologize, but I wanted to give a little background. I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Audit Committee, for allowing us this opportunity to bring this. And let me give some background to where we are right now. And my colleague, Mr. Craig, is going to help us through this process. As you know, we had over time a number of internal superintendents that were hired and did wonderful jobs and did well, and all were very different but equally committed to CPS. And in the selection of our newest superintendent, our current superintendent, it was a very, very big decision to go outside the system for the final selection. I think there are things that reveal why we were motivated to do so. Not the least of which, we've gone through crisis after crisis regarding COVID and what have you. And throughout, we've had tremendous, as the chair points out, tremendous support from the community. And sometimes we feel like we earned it, and sometimes we feel like maybe we haven't. But the expectation of our community is that we continue to improve and excel. Because of the quick transition from Superintendent Mitchell, and then our interim superintendent, then our new superintendent, and the conclusion of our strategic plan at the end of last school year, we've had to kind of do something in reverse as we prepare for our next strategic plan. And we're not totally clear about how that process will work itself out, but we do have some timelines that we want to work through. Because we had 3 new board members, thank goodness, and have a new superintendent and are post-COVID and thinking about the future, we decided that it was important for the board and the new administration to go, and our own staff of 2, to go through an effort of training and exploration with the Great City Schools folks that have been associated with us for almost 25 years as a guiding organization. similar to the National School Board Association, but more a vendor emphasizing and stressing urban districts, which NSBA and OSBA don't necessarily stress the urban environment, the urban schools district. So we use their expertise of all these groups. And so we hired them to help us with governance. So normally when you prepare for a strategic plan, you kind of start with a gathering of folks regarding developing a vision and a mission. Well, we've had the same vision and mission, I believe, since 2014. It led us through the last strategic plan, and it led us through about 4 years before that, before we even had a strategic plan. And we still value the current vision and mission. However, that's where you usually start. We couldn't really start there because we had other things to do in a preliminary way. And that was to have the arrival of a new superintendent. And so what we did, and what the Great City Schools folks told us that we probably needed to do, was stress governance and figure out the role and the relationship between the superintendent and treasurer. That's the thing we keep adding that other districts may not have because of the independence of our treasurer in the state of Ohio. And so what we've worked on and what they've led us through is a system that they've used, I think, since 2017 or so, I believe, 2017. And that is the vision, mission, so to speak, is really what they call goals and guardrails. And the goals represent the vision, but I'm wrong, and the guardrails are to represent the values that the community holds. So in a way, you might be kind of starting in the middle for a strategic plan, but it worked within our efforts in these first few months, and this started back in the summer, if you will. So what we've been doing is having a number of focus groups, listening sessions, and the board members have been leading them and taking notes and getting it directly from a number of groups. And Member Craig has facilitated some, I've facilitated some. And interestingly enough, we have a head start on some of those focus groups, largely because we had such an extensive community engagement in the search for the superintendent. We had a group of the Alma group out of Chicago, and we've already sung their praises last year. And really what even the Great City Schools folks decided is that we, as a starting place for community engagement, we would, because of our confidence in it, we would start with the findings from that effort. So this is now going all the way back. Sorry to not make this in a sequential way, but it almost has to be kind of this way. And so we started with that data, and then Great City Schools came in and worked with the board, worked with the superintendent, worked with the treasurer. And what we did over a number of meetings, many meetings, public meetings, even when we looked like we were making sausage and it was a very ugly event, very frankly, but we did it in front of everybody, so that's good. Maybe not in a levy year, come to think of it, but we did it. And so what we have are guardrails representing values, and it's a draft of 5 or so. And we have also the goals, 5 or so, that are in truly draft form based upon the work of the board, Great City Schools, the treasurer, and the superintendent. These are in draft form. I want to keep saying that every time because even the focus groups I've been involved with so far, I assure you that the focus group members propose any number of changes. And it's not just wordsmithing. It's like, why isn't this there or why isn't? So they're in draft form and we present them to you today. And I know you had them ahead of time. And we're going to listen to the community to create and select the goals and create and select the guardrails, working from these drafts that can change quite significantly. Try to pass, after we finish the community effort, try to pass final versions of both the goals and guardrails, I believe by December 5th. And throughout all of this, Mr. Craig has been, with a couple of colleagues, has been leading us through this and doing the liaison work with Great City Schools. So would you like to talk a little bit about that and where we're going?
Yeah. So one of the things that we really focused on when we were doing this effort is the role of the board in coming up with goals for the board's governing role with the district. So what you will see throughout this process is really focused around, we as a board set a shining star point for which the superintendent and the treasurer and the rest of the district is tasked with devising a plan to get there, right? And so these are not the only things that we're doing. These are not the only opportunities for growth and development within the district, but these are the areas that we are looking at to really target and hone. And so that was part of what we've been working on for the last few months, is to think about what are those key areas that we want to use as kind of those shining points there. I think the other thing that's really important to recognize in what this is and what we're doing here is that this is a perfect opportunity for us to bring to the community. So we've met with different community partners, with faith leaders, with district partners. We have a student panel. We have a number of ways that folks can interact, including a survey on the website for folks to give feedback. So we're getting feedback more than just us going out and talking to folks, but also folks have that opportunity to input that feedback into the surveys that we have on the website. But it really is thinking about what we are doing successfully, what things are not working successfully, what things are we looking to improve upon, and then how do we scope that into the goals that the district or that the board is centered around and focused around, and our role in governing the superintendent and the treasurer's office. And so all of the things, I think Board Member Bolton gave a really good recitation of how we got to here, but I think all of these things are really with the lens that these are the things that we as a board are offering out to build that the values and the vision for which we would then build the strategic plan as to how we achieve those things from it. The other part to that, and I think you'll see this as we go through some of the goals, is that they are, again, as Board Member Bolton said, they're drafts. And so there are certain aspects and ideas that we selected for particular reasons, but we also want the community to give their vision and their thoughts to it. And whether or not those are the focal points that they want us to rely upon or to focus on, or maybe there are things that we did not catch that they thought were really important. And so to Board Member Bolton's point, and the ones that I've done already, there are folks who have really heightened our attention to certain aspects of what we did not cover within our goals. So it's not even just that the goals themselves are so bad or anything to that effect, but that there were areas that we did not mention or that weren't explicitly written in. And so those are opportunities for us to improve and to change those things. So I think as we walk through this, keeping that in mind, that this is an opportunity to provide feedback and ideas, but also that you have an additional opportunity to provide feedback through the surveys on the website as well. So if there are more things that come to mind before the end of next week, you are welcome to go to the survey on CPS's website. There's actually a lovely button there. It makes it really easy for folks when you go to the homepage to click on it. You'll see all the goals and guardrails and the link to the feedback to be able to provide additional feedback through the survey. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. If before we take any quick questions about that, the deadline that we have right now is that December 5th to vote on the final version that is informed by the community. And then also it is certainly our intention, and we're going to do this at a great effort and good effort. We want this work to be concluded no later than the end of this school year. And more importantly, we want to be able to be somewhere these goals and guardrails as a launching pad, if you will, for some of the other work that is required to have a real strategic plan. And we want the strategic plan to impact, and the treasurer is insistent upon this, to impact the development not only of the May 5-year forecast and its new arrangements, but also to be able to impact fiscal year 24, which would be next year's budget. So, let's see of it, know if this is a 3-year strategic plan or a 5-year. Those are things that the board still has to work out. But again, if you have particular questions about the process, Member Craig knows that much better than I, but I would say that this process is very rich, and we really wanted the audit committee as one of our standard bearers as community input and specialized efforts. And we want you to be as brutally honest or as kind as you care to be. And we're very, very happy to at least ask the questions. I will take one point of personal privilege. If the question says, what is CPS doing and shouldn't do or is doing, whatever, please don't limit it to CPS. If you have a broader understanding of where you think our young people are, or this community is, be it locally or regionally, the importance of the district, you may have a more muscular view of the operations piece, as the chair mentions. Tell it all. Don't feel like, well, I don't have any direct knowledge of where the decimal point is on reading scores. Don't feel like you can say, well, I don't, but the kids need to be able to read. And with the release just this week, too, of the NAEP scores and testing, which is the lowest it's been since 1990. We don't show very well there. And also with the report card piece coming out, you all have great, I think, background as citizens and also our financial experts. So does anybody have any questions about the process? We're gonna speed through this. This usually takes a couple of hours.
I want to say something.
Yeah. Cool.
We've had tremendous turnover at the superintendent position. We hired this Ironetta from the Detroit Public Schools. You have 5 guardrails. 1, the superintendent shall not. 2, the superintendent shall not. 3, the superintendent will not. 4, the superintendent will not. 5, the superintendent shall not. What is the driver for trying to tell this our new person everything she can't do? I mean, I don't understand it.
Dear, excuse me, Mr. Chair, every single focus group we've had and every single board meeting we've had about this, everyone resents that verbiage. It is not verbiage that we invented. We actually fought it, and maybe, Brandon, you can say who invented it.
So the idea behind the guardrails is really that we want to open up the opportunities for the superintendent to be able to make decisions. We're not giving her demands or commands to do certain things, but instead giving her the limitations on what she can do when she's acting upon these goals, right? Or when she's trying to strive to achieve these goals. And so the theory behind it is always that guardrails are the values in which we say you cannot step past this line in achieving the goals of the district. And so that's the way they've shaped it. Again, I think this is feedback that we will certainly take back to our discussions, and so that we can fully develop those goals and guardrails. But again, this is something that we as a board, it's new to using language like that. But in an effort to really give the information out and get true feedback, we wanted to make sure that we at least adhered to as much as possible the format at which the Council of Great City Schools is utilized in this process. And then again, allow the community to really give that feedback and guidance as to what they would expect and want.
Okay, well, I sent her an email this morning, asked Ironetta to attend. Okay, she was busy. So my presumption is that she asked for a significant amount of autonomy running the district. That's what she's used to in Detroit. And you said, wait a second, you can have that autonomy, but we need to set certain guardrails so that you don't over-exercise your autonomy. Is that where this is coming from, or?
It's not so much that she asked for a certain level of autonomy. It's more that there is, essentially following within the advice of the Council on Great City Schools formatting of how they have done student outcome centered goal setting. So it's more of a formatting per se than it is anything formalized as she's asked for a certain level of autonomy. I think it also centers us back to where the role of the board is, in that the board's role is not to mandate what happens at each level of the district, but instead to really govern superintendent and the treasurer. And so in some ways, what tends to happen is boards will say, you need to improve scores in reading by doing X, Y, and Z. And that really limits where the superintendent's ability to make those decisions and build those decisions. The idea from Council of Great City Schools and the reason they use that method is that they say, by saying, in doing X, Y, and Z, you cannot do these things. This gives the superintendent more ability to do her job or to do their job without necessarily being mandated by anything from the board. And then from those results and those methods of which they use, we then are able to assess how the superintendent did their job, how the treasurer did their job.
I would add real quickly on this, the Great City Schools. I think Brandon's explained it very well. First of all, Great City Schools deals with urban districts. Urban districts are not like the suburban districts where in often cases it's the families and the teachers that are probably having so much more input. In urban districts, it's our unions, it's our maybe the community on occasion gets left out. But I will say that Great City Schools, at least they have a whole nother vocabulary for us, but one of my favorite verbs, or not verbs, nouns, of what they suggest is that the owners of the school district are the people that live and pay for it, live in it. So it's the community that owns the schools. And that's a very important concept in an urban environment. So as much as they seem to be kind of restrictive, that verbiage, I think, helps us understand our role is to represent the community, its vision, its values, and where the community may want to go, but it's the what. All the hows basically have to be with the professionals. And so I think that shall not, which we've all resisted, is to Brandon's point, perfectly stated. Actually is supposed to be giving more full range than lessening the range. That as long as you're operating within these guardrails, we're not going to try to interfere. And in Cincinnati Public, real quickly, this has been a system of schools, maybe not a school system. So there's a lot of things that need to probably be reviewed.
One comment, Tim, when you said that about the shall not, I reread it thinking, oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of it that way. And then I read Guardrail 2 and I thought, well, that makes sense. And it frames it up there where we want to increase reading proficiency, but not to the detriment of the arts and athletics and civic engagement. And so I do agree with you. It's kind of off-putting a little bit, the shall not, should not. But at the same time, if you frame it up that way, it does make sense to me, just fundamentally.
I mean, it looks to me like some sort of, I don't know, power struggle between the board and the superintendent, frankly. I don't know if that's happening or not, but that's my perception, Eve. I'm sorry.
I think that's cool. I think that it's certainly trying to define the relationship between a duly elected board representing the community and having the professionals that we have to carry out the vision and the mission of the district. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's a power thing, although it's about power. It really is about relationship, ongoing relationship. Who's leading what purpose does everybody serve? Because everybody's got a kind of a different sort of role with the same goal in mind.
I'd like to be recognized by the chair.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Tim. I think there have been some good points here. These shall nots and will nots, I like them. They're good. I mean, everybody wants what these things are saying. But I think Tim makes a good point. You might want to have something around these to improve the optic.
Mm-hmm.
Something a little, but I wouldn't change these, but maybe a little preference or something. My question is on the survey and the survey button on the website. Is that survey open to any owner of the schools, like any citizen of the city? Or?
That survey button is open to anybody who wants to choose to go to our website and fill it out. So whether you are a resident of the city or not, whether you are a owner of our district or not.
So what's the deadline to finish that?
So the survey answers need to be in by the 4th of November. So that's essentially next week, so that we can digest the information and apply it in. If stuff comes in after the fact, they still may get put in, still may be reviewed. It's difficult to collect them all at once.
So is this something that has been widely advertised to the city members?
So the website's been up for a couple of days now. The push is on the front page of the website, so it's actually like the lead what's new in the district on the website. They've posted it on social media to allow people to have information on that. It's been pushed out to the schools themselves to let the students and parents know. And then there was a call that went out to the district weekend as well, so everybody who's on the call line for the district this weekend as well, to let them know about what we're doing.
I was thinking it'd be really good to get input of, all the citizens if we can do it. There's people that are like me, whose kids are grown, but would have some interesting insights into public schools or the city, to live in the city. And also, I think business leaders, they're could be made aware of this, because they're going to hire these alumni of CPS. So, or even the business leaders that are trying to attract employees to come live in the city, all that. So for what it's worth, just advertise that around, and I'll do it.
Great.
I turn it over back to the chair.
He's so bad.
Does anybody have any comments, or should I turn it back over to Eve?
I have a couple just high-level questions. On the goals, I see reading, workforce, reading, math, graduation. I'm not an educator, so I won't pretend to know the answers. But is there a reason reading and math are focused and not social studies, science, writing, other disciplines that I think would be important?
So in devising or in coming up with our goals, we did this in concert with the superintendent. And so what we were looking for are those areas where we, as a district, so one, where the district has room to grow and a need to grow, but two, in areas where there are constant measurables that effectuate some major difference for a child's path through our system. So when we look at what measurables can we attach to whether or not a student will be successful post their time in CPS, looking at early English and early reading abilities, English language arts abilities and reading was one of those focuses. Looking at the math skill because it's a requirement as well. So the algebra one's a requirement of graduation. Looking at those things were part of that process. Again, this is an opportunity to provide some feedback as to if there are other areas that you think should be areas of focus as well. We'll kind of work through that through this process today. But additionally, even though it's not listed in the goals, it does not necessarily mean it is not something the superintendent is paying close attention to and working hard to improve. As we can see in some of the numbers that we've produced at, I guess it's 3 board meetings ago, or 2 board meetings ago, the areas where we as a district and whereas we as a country also are seeing these challenges, specifically generally are centered around math and English because of the way they're measured and the testing that's utilized to measure them, more so than we have a consistent measurables that we use around English and math, more so than we do around some of the social studies, history, and science.
I think that's how we're evaluated, math and English test scores. That's how our district is compared to others, I guess, across the United States of America. So we got to focus on that. And those are basic skills. that our kids need, whatever they're going to do. So.
Often they're referred to as the gateway skills, so to speak, especially the math piece. And to Tim's point, this is what is predominantly influencing the Ohio report card, if you will. And as you see with the NAEP folks nationally, these are the two areas, the two skill areas. I do think one of the things to ask about this post-COVID, because we know that our kids have suffered both emotionally and instructionally as a result of what's happened over the last couple of years. I'm very interested in finding out, as a retired social studies teacher, I want to see if that post-COVID negativity is not only played out in these two major skill areas, but I'm interested to see what our science scores, our social studies scores, and other sorts of instruction. I wonder if it's as bad as this particular issue of reading and math, because it may not be playing into the kids' passion. It's interesting as we try to figure it out. But it's because this is what's assessed, and this is how we are compared. And disproportionately, it's a big influence on the report card, both nationally and statewide.
Clarice, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. For goal number 2, or the draft goal number 2, what is CCP credit?
College Credit Plus.
Okay. And then the second thing was, you've been intentional in mentioning in this meeting that it's the superintendent and the treasurer. Were there guardrails specific to the treasurer, or because these all are regarding the superintendent?
There weren't guardrails specific to the treasurer. There was some interfacing with some of these guardrails, like the transparency piece and a few other efforts. The idea that whatever we come up with has to be financially sound or what have you, but there's not a separate step for them. It's a team, but the partnership that they have and the relationship, not personal, but the technical relationship that they have. And this has been something for our superintendent. It's been very difficult. And fortunately, the treasurer and the superintendent have been able to work very well together. But this is basically a function of the Midwestern states, where you have an independent treasurer as well as an independent, so to speak, superintendent.
Eve, how about guardrails for the board members?
That's right. We have it. It's called our protocol.
Is that changed, or is that so?
No.
The point is a good one. The only guardrails are on the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
In this document, anyway.
Right. Our guardrails are part of board policy, and the board policy, where we have 350 policies, I think, for the district. Are the very first ones are what we call a protocol or bylaws, and it's outlined in several pages or more as to what we can and cannot do procedurally. Then also, obviously, Ohio Revised Code outlines what we are allowed to do or not allowed to do, or what our responsibilities or functions are legally, versus that's not the case necessarily for a superintendent. So that's there, and I would suggest that you ask a good point, because I know throughout all of this, at least once every meeting we have, it's like, let's keep in mind, how do we need to revise our bylaws, and do we need to change in our efforts to have a protocol that makes more sense?
The other aspect of this is that as part of the governance training that we're doing, and as part of the kind of building for folks like myself who are the new board members, but also for the folks who are on the board, we are doing our own part of reviewing our own work as a board member of our job of governing, and whether or not we've been effective in doing that work. And so there is some aspects that we will set for our own selves of our reviews of our performance, what guardrails do we set for ourselves as board members, that are not necessarily part of this part, that would be what we would use to dictate where the district as a whole should be headed towards as we build the strategic plan. So I think the large part of this is really built around where the board's role and where the district goes forward. There is some parts of us that there are some aspects of, as Member Bolton stated, that are set forth in our bylaws as to what we are to do and not to do, but there are our own discussions that we were having independent of the strategic plan as to what is a board member's role, what is a successful way to board member to help achieve goals for the district, where are our limitations on what we can and cannot do to be successful in those roles. And so is a new way of thinking about things for a lot of us, in that it is really pushing us to focus on that specific task of governing as opposed to the result that we want. Because I think that's, in a lot of ways, gets us down the pathway to doing things that are beyond what the board has responsibility for and the board has the ability to achieve.
You know, this superintendent turnover.
We also have some questions down this way. I know you're not looking this way and you're missing us. So I'd like to jump in. So I know we have our goals that measure learning, and I think that's great. But do we have goals to address the detractors from learning, like the disciplinary issues that we have that prevent kids who are there to learn? They can't learn because teachers are spending a lot of times dealing with the disciplinary. I think that is a huge issue in our schools that I think we need to have some type of goals around. Thank you.
I'm just also taking notes from everything that people were saying. So the goals that we have set there are the 5 goals. Now, what we do have is within the guardrail, one of the guardrails, I believe, is guardrail E, is centered around the idea of fostering a climate that will not foster a climate that of systemic inequities in disciplinary action towards students, including at a minimum race and gender. And those are things, again, as these are drafts, those are things we can change, expand, build up further. This a little bit goes into that idea of the goals versus guardrails idea, in that the goal is really the goals are supposed to be student focused, student outcome focused. What is the achievable for student outcome? Then how do we get them there is something that the superintendent will come in and start building in. But what we can do within the guardrails is say, we know we have this problem with inequities in certain aspects that affect ability for students to learn. As the superintendent is striving to achieve the goals of getting these different measurables hit, you cannot let these other things still exist, because we know that we won't hit those points if those things still exist. And so I think that's generally how we've been framing the goals versus guardrails conversation. Again, it's an excellent point for us to be thinking about as far as what are those limitations that must be addressed that would affect a child's ability to succeed in the district.
Yeah, I do think that's a really helpful clarification, because I think that there's 2 sort of fundamental baselines that I saw missing in the goals, that really you can't achieve any of the goals without them. We know they've also gotten worse post-pandemic, attendance being one of them, that attendance is critical to any of this, and a baseline for any of this. You cannot have success without the kids in the seats. And the most recent attendance data coming out of the state was really horrible. And I know that there's lots of causes for it and lots of complications to it, but if we don't make some huge impacts on attendance, we won't have any of these outcomes. And the second is sort of the social emotional well-being and mental health of our children. And we also know that there's some recent data to share that, we're at a pretty dire state from that regard as well. And so I think, I see at least the social emotional well-being somewhat in guardrail 2, but I would really like to see more somehow in here about the mental health of our students and making sure that we have some focus on attendance.
Thanks, Christine. We're an audit committee. We deal with internal controls and money. Okay, and very disturbing to me, this turnover we've had at essentially our CEO position, which not only costs money to find a new CEO, takes board time to interview and onboard the CEO. It distracts from our core mission of educating our students. And I just want to make sure that whatever we've done in the past, the people have come in, Laura came in with a lot of energy, a lot of drive. I read what Ironetta put together, which is in our packet, my 100-day journey. She's come in with a lot of energy, a lot of drive. She wants to make a difference. She has experience in Detroit. And I don't know why these people are leaving or why they've left in the past, probably different reasons. But I just hope we're taking steps to keep Ironetta here for a while, whatever that takes. So, okay, I'm finished with that. Anybody else have any comments, Christy?
I'm curious, Ms. Bolton, you might be able to share. My experience is that, especially post-COVID, the turnover at the superintendent rate for urban school districts, the average tenure is in the like 2 to 3 year range. Could you just, because I think it's helpful industry context that you might not see it at a big CPG company or a big other industry where you're turning over that CEO role that frequently. I was curious if you knew some of those national stats.
That's true, with the exception of having just the almost a year of an interim superintendent due to the search and the very quick departure from by Superintendent Mitchell. We are, if you put several of these superintendents together, we're way above the average for maintaining urban superintendents. So that's helpful because you want that constancy and that consistency if you can possibly do it, because these things don't happen in a year and things take much more time. So yes, we're well within that average, actually above that average, with the exception of that one interim year. And of course, Superintendent Wright has signed a contract that is actually a little bit above the average. And her background in Detroit is basically the second in command in Detroit, and then also kind of second in command out of Jacksonville. I don't know, with the exception of Mrs. Ronan, I don't think, and maybe Mrs. Blackwell, we've never hired anybody for this job with that much experience. So we're going to hope that bodes well for us. I do want to answer one thing about the discipline piece and the attendance piece. Attendance is one of those, but maybe it was number 7 that didn't quite make the number 5, because that is crucial. And the other piece is we do have a problem regarding kids that can behave or don't behave or whatever, and it's a disruptive focus for other students. And that is something that needs to be addressed. I know it's sort of being addressed in policy committee too, about the sense that maybe we too often are passing kids on, or even that the state has a very, very lenient way of looking at attendance and saying what's really bad, or because if they're not here, we can't do anything.
And I just wanted to give a quick also add on to the point that was raised by the chair, which is that a lot of this work that we are doing right now is also being done in concert with the superintendent. And so the fact that she's at the table and that she's also helping us come up with these goals, these guardrails, that she's been a part of that discussion the entire time, is also an example of how the board and the superintendent have to work together for there to be success. And so in order for these goals to even matter or work, we have to know what the data shows. We have to know what is achievable. We have to know how we get to those points. And that's where she's been bringing that expertise in this discussion. So I think in a lot of ways, this actually makes her more inclined to feel like she can achieve success in the district, that she is more likely to feel like she's being set up for success by us defining what those goals are, giving her the opportunity to be a part of that discussion, and then measuring how we get there.
I want to reiterate about the attendance and discipline. I live near Riverview Academy, and I see it every morning when I go out running. There's kids hanging out, not in school.
You got it.
And I tell them to get to school, and I get back talk. I do. I get back talk. And then I say, I'll say, was that back talk? And then they walk over to school. But I do think, though, I think, I know you have protocol and bylaws and all that, but I do think one role that the board could play is finding partnerships for the school district for this guardrail number 2. To reiterate what Christine said, I think it's important that we are attentive to the child as a whole. I don't think you can do it just with the schools. You got to have partnerships with other organizations in the city to help make that happen. And I think that's a role that the board could maybe play in helping foster and find those partnerships. So,
right.
Whatever that's worth.
If we could go to just the questions, you skipped to the end, which is goals and guardrails. I'm not surprised. I think I mentioned that to a couple of people. They're going to be on the last part of this, but as we look at this so that we can take the right notes and get as specific as possible and accomplish this, I will add, we are meeting with the CBC Education Committee. They're one of our focus groups next week. And there are community councils that we're meeting with, and the business advisory folks that are meeting right now are able to come back tomorrow when we meet with the STEP committee from the previous strategic plan. So it's just remarkable where we're meeting with folks. So if we can go to our questions, get my teacher voice out. I won't be loud, but I will be assertive. Hard to imagine me being assertive, I know, but the question that we would like to ask you is, what is Cincinnati Public Schools doing that is not working and that should be stopped? And some of what you've already kind of said touches on some of that, but if we can take a second or two to think about that, what is it that we are, not yet doing? Should start doing was a question too. So, I mean, and then if you look at what is Cincinnati Public doing that is working and that we should keep doing, those are the kind of questions we need some specific answers to that would really guide us. And as Brandon mentioned, this November 4th thing regarding the website, that only pertains to goals and guardrails, right? Does it extend beyond that?
Yeah, so again, all the feedback we'll certainly keep taking as long as folks are providing feedback in. But as far for us building the goals and guardrails for our final version, that November 4th is kind of the deadline that we're looking at, so that we have time to take any information and decipher it and put together those feedback that we would be posting also online and putting towards the goals. But to Member Bolton's point, we have the 3 questions there for what is CPS not yet doing that it should start doing? What is Cincinnati Public Schools doing that is not working that should be stopped? And then what is Cincinnati Public Schools doing that is working and we should keep doing that we would definitely want to get your feedback on as far as those three questions.
I don't know the answer, but are we preparing our students for legitimate good jobs, technical skills? I don't know, auto repair. I think there's something called Cincinnati Cooks, which teaches kids to be cooks in restaurants. I mean, there's a ton of job opportunities out there right now that are not being fulfilled. Are we teaching them how to use a cash register? Old tool. I don't know the answer. And maybe we are. I don't really know. I'm not that close to it. But that seems to me to be an important objective.
We'll write that down. We're not supposed to keep responding because, of course, we like to talk a lot. But, yeah, there's been a huge emphasis in the last, with, I think, Mrs. Mitchell on career efforts. And it's something, developing a workforce practical as possible and as visionary as possible, so we're not preparing people for jobs that won't be there or that are lowly paid. But yes, we are doing that, and I think to your point, we want to do more. And for auto mechanics, no, but we'd rather have a barn that is emphasizing electric cars at this point in time. And we would like Sherrod Brown and Rob Portman, before he leaves, to get that for us. Others?
Go ahead.
So I just had a couple of thoughts.
Great.
What is the district not doing? And this may be sort of related to the first goal, so the fiscal analysis for the change. One thought that I had is, just as a district parent, I see a lot of apps and programs and different technology learning tools sort of coming and going. And I'm wondering if that is maybe part of that ROI contract analysis project, where before the district is investing in this or that program, that there's a little bit of evidence for its effectiveness. I think I don't know how it happens. I can imagine a sales team comes in and paints this really beautiful picture of what this program will do for students and how easy it will be for teachers, and then I'm guessing that doesn't always measure up that way. So I would certainly like to see, just from a financial perspective and from an education perspective, that these specifically as it relates to stuff that they're doing on the computer, because they spend so much time on the screens. Sometimes the apps they don't work. They seem like not very targeted to specific learning objectives. And I'm assuming that the district is paying a lot of money for access to those programs. So that's one thought I had. The other thought I wanted to share was just something that the district should start doing, and maybe they're already doing this, but is I tried to kind of think of what is a broad category for this type of thing, and the only thing I could come up with was adulting, like helping our teenagers, our high schoolers, like really learn basic skills for being in the world. So not specifically academic skills, not necessarily even career readiness skills, but just like understanding taxes, understanding like personal finance, budgeting, but also more like home economic stuff, like feeding yourself and, just those basic like life skills that I think whether you're going off to college or whether you're graduating and getting a job are really important in becoming like a valuable, good member of our community. And I feel like that's one thing that I think is sort of universal, maybe, across socioeconomic levels and education levels in many communities, is that, young people are really entering adulthood without some of those basic life skills. And I also think that to put a huge emphasis on, well, that's not really the district's job, parents should be doing that, related to that, but also just school engagement in general, I think can be a little unfair to put such a responsibility on parents that just, may not have the capacity for that. And how can we not blame those parents but also break that cycle so that we are really raising like the next generation of community members that can be like valuable, engaged, civically engaged, economically engaged members of our community. A couple thoughts.
That's a great idea. I was thinking sort of like a Big Brothers Big Sisters program. or an adult
Okay.
mentoring program, because I think a lot of our students do not have strong role models. That's a whole. I agree with you. I don't know how you define it. Adulting is, I think that's a good
I
word.
like that.
I don't think it is a word, but it's a good word.
It is now.
It is now. Liz embedded it.
Liz, I shouldn't have let you go first because that was what I was going to say. Just kidding. I said life skills, how to balance a checkbook, what's credit, interest rate on credit cards, what the stock market is and how that works, how to open a bank account. I mean, those are all things that you rely on your parent to do for you. And if they don't have those strong role models, that's something that's important. Another item, I guess, I don't know if we're not doing it, but it's something that's very prominent right now. Software, IT, data analytics. I mean, there's a lot of kids going into college that are just data analysis. And there's a ton of opportunity out there. And are we priming students to be able to access those jobs, maybe with only having to go and get a 2-year degree, or what are we doing in the jobs of tomorrow? And I'll be selfish as an accountant. I mean, I think accounting is one area where you could easily go get a 2-year degree and get a great job in accounting. But having some of that education in high school, prior to needing to go to college for that would be something that would be of interest.
Do we have job fairs for seniors?
Yes, so, I'm sorry, go ahead. I know when we were looking for a superintendent and we had someone come in and was asking us questions about what we would like to see. One of the things that I think that we should start doing is really engaging the alumni more. Sort of to your point, pre-COVID, one of the things we wanted to do at my high school is to link an alumni with a freshman student, follow them through graduation. And I don't think CPS does a great job at linking the importance of the community that you have that has large ties, because everybody knows that comes from Cincinnati. Graduates of CPS are very attached to their high school, right? And I think that there is value there that you can gain by building something from that relationship that I don't think we tap into good enough. The other thing I think maybe that we should stop doing is uniforms. I think what we find is a lot of kids don't come to school with their uniforms. We're, as an alumni association, we're purchasing extra uniforms so that people can, if they come to school without a uniform, right, they can be given something to make sure that they're within code. Goes back to the disciplinary model that I think that we have to have some guardrails around, but I think uniforms just causes that much more for someone to have to deal with, and an administrator to have to deal with enforcing kids to wear uniforms that in some cases may not be their fault, that their clothes didn't get washed the night before and they don't have the clothes to wear to school. Another thing that I think that used to happen when I was in school, we had staff that attended a lot of our after school activities that you don't see around a lot now. So one of the asks of our alumni association is to fill our stands with alumni so we have more adults in the stands. And since we've done that, we've had less disruption, less fights, just seeing, and we don't even have to talk to the kids. They just see us there. They see our pride, and we don't have those issues. I think that also happened for us. It was our staff. So I think that's another place that alumni could help. And I think it's all about having an ask, right? There's not been an ask out there. And I think what you should continue to do is care, because all of you, I know you care about the kids' success. So as long as you keep caring, you will keep finding ways to better this process for our future. So those are my.
Do another keep doing is the community center, learning center models and sort of the wraparound services for our children. So that's one. And the other is the investment in early childhood education. As a dual appointed member of the audit committee and the preschool promise board, I feel like I have to say that, but both I think are some of our best ROI items as well. So from the audit committee lens, I think the data continues to show that spending dollars in preschool pays dividends for years and years and years and years. And I think the same is true for our resource coordinators and our community learning center model of when we can find other reasons to connect the family to the school and meet a lot of those needs of the children right there on the premises, we improve things like attendance and academics.
So do we have parents, school association, parent teachers associations?
Yes, but not in every school. I'll answer that one largely because I believe that it's having PTAs, PTOs has been part of our previous strategic plan, and I know it's also part of, or at least it's evolving into the superintendent's evaluation piece, if I recall. Mm-hmm. It appears there, and we just worked on that one and passed that last Monday, and that is one of the several items. We think that's crucial, and I know in finance and policy we've said we will pay for the school's membership as we get associated with the national movement of the PTA group. So very important, very important.
Any other comments from audit committee board members? Okay. It's
one more. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Grace.
No. So I love the conversation around adulting and life skills. And I don't know if this was just something that happened during the pandemic, but I know it was brought to my attention that the younger kids were just being passed along to the next grade. And in order for them, I think, to learn and be prepared for those life skills in adulting, they need to know how to read and they need to know math. And I know in the goals, there are a couple or several of them related to reading proficiency, and just being mindful that even at the younger age, providing the structure or having community partners. I know we were part of working with one of the elementary schools in coming in and tutoring math and reading. And I know the pandemic kind of squashed all of that stuff, but maybe if there's an opportunity to re-engage communities, community partners to come in and assist and help the younger children, learn to read or get to the level that they need to read to be proficient, not only in passing the tests in the third grade, which ultimately, if you can read, hopefully in the third grade and you're on task, then you pass the test in the sixth grade. But at least having someone put some extra eyes and ears on those children to assist them, because we all know that there are all kinds of barriers that could potentially be there to disrupt their learning, maybe at home or outside of the school. So inside of the school, just making sure that they have a fighting chance. And so I think that is one of the not working is passing them along, and that is working is engaging the community partners and having them tutor students or connect with a child or mentor a child, whatever those types of programs look like.
Great. Great.
Clarice, any other? Jim, we're done. And do you have a comment or not? Okay. It's now 10 minutes of 6. The last agenda item is other business and or district updates. So Eve, I think you typically update us. Is there anything you want to update us about that we would find interesting?
I think you had a lot of updates through this presentation, and we've gotten a lot of great information, and we appreciate it greatly. And I do like the opportunity to have all these more and more discussion, as I know you all are working through it with the goals and what have you. The update that I have is that we are continuing to work on this. We are the last 2 weeks before our levy, which you all know all well about. I'll give you a quick update from my alma mater today, Swoop. That's why I have purple on. Talking about partnerships, today Miami University was at Aiken to celebrate the first and second cohort of future teachers that the Miami University in their education college have adopted a number of our kids from Aiken, starting when they were in 8th grade and preparing them to teach. The dean was there and the superintendent was there and a number of business partners that are helping with that. And it went extremely well. And we're really pleased and proud of it. They also have in-house a preschool at Aiken, which is very important as part of all of that effort. And so that's my update on career and partnerships and what have you. It's back in game, so to speak. But the most important thing that happened at Aiken today, even more important than the future, is that they were on a goat watch today. We have a pregnant goat at Aiken, and they were in labor. It was in labor, right, Superintendent? It was in labor, and I don't know if you got an update about the birth of the goat yet, but after we do all this heady good stuff like this, yes. And the other piece that's interesting, we have a star at Aiken, and I'll try to not talk too long, but we have a star runner at Aiken. And she was able to meet with board member Weinberg today, and board member Weinberg brought her gold medal and is developing a really ongoing relationship and mentorship with that fantastic runners. Many of our runners at Aiken are international students, refugees and immigrants. There are now well over 300. And so that's another area. So we're excited, but I wanted to bring the Aiken update since you've got all this district. And we'll be sending out, that's it. I love it. I love it. But you're right. I should mention about the superintendent's very interested in the whole alumni piece, especially recognizing the affinity, the love that Cincinnatians and greater Cincinnatians have for their high schools. So I know she's already been talking a little bit about that. So, but that's the update. It's from College Hill, center of the universe, Aiken High School. A goat watch is underway.
So I guess that I saw in the news where a student got dropped off at the wrong school or something.
Oh, yes, we have that.
So that's
issue.
calmed down. Is that?
It's gotten much better. The superintendent handed out to us this week the on-time piece for at least all the yellow buses by school, which is very important. But yes, transportation continues to be a challenge and being addressed as best as the resources will allow.
Yeah, I just want to point out that it's very easy to be critical, but it's a hard job running the school system.
Yeah.
It really is. There's a lot of constituencies, 35,000 students, many of whom come from challenged backgrounds. It is hard. I appreciate, the job you guys are doing, and I appreciate how difficult it is to run Cincinnati Public Schools. That's all.
Thank you.
Comment?
So I know you mentioned the levy today, and I think in the meeting before, or last meeting or meeting before that, we all voted to support the levy. My question, I don't see signs or I don't see any material, and I know it's just a renewal, but shouldn't we still see signs or shouldn't we still see something about the levy?
My understanding Superintendent, is that the signs are almost all out and we are replenishing. And I know there was a levy update meeting while we were still doing this, as well as the business advisory. But yes, it's been more low key than I can recall. And
There are
we'll
no
see what
signs
happens.
against it either, for that matter.
That's
I
right.
haven't seen any signs for or against, frankly, and I drive around the city a lot.
Yeah, and the professionals that are running it and the folks that are working through it seem relatively confident. And of course, I'm always nervous about the levy because we'll be coming back to you if something bad happens, I'll tell you.
I will add that with regard to the levy, we have seen a number of organizations and groups that have come out in support. And so I think from that aspect of it, I don't think we see the apprehension in the same levels that we would have seen for some past levies, which may be why we don't see as much of a call your attention and screaming to the hilltops situation. But there are signs out. True enough, there are other signs that probably stand in front of them in much bigger form for other folks that are in political campaigns right now, which may also be why most people don't see them. And so, but there are those that are out there, and I know that they are still grabbing more signs as much as they can to be. But if you would like signs in your yard, please let us know.
Your point's well taken. Everybody's saying that.
Anybody have any more comments?
And there's a rally on Friday.
Withrow. It's honk and wave and goodness knows what else. It'll line the.
Yeah, it's the honk and wave, and then they're going to have also the walk down to the polls for folks to vote early. So it'll be an effort to drive folks out for the honk and wave, as well as get folks to go vote.
I'd like to thank the audit committee members for attending. We pretty much had perfect attendance, except those that emailed us in advance that they couldn't be here. And without further ado, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.